Most people think their credit score measures whether they are a responsible person. I have never trusted that way. A credit score is not a moral score. It is not a gratitude score. It is not a score that says this person meant well and paid the bill in full a few weeks later. It is a risk snapshot, and snapshots are cruel. That is the line I want you to hold in your mind while I talk to you. The system does not score your intentions. It scores the photo. That is the mother line for this whole story. The photo, because once you understand that, a lot of the nonsense around credit scores stops feeling mysterious. People use their cards, they spend money, they keep the cash in the bank. The bill arrives, they pay it in full, no interest, no late fee, no drama. Then 3 days later, they check their credit and the score is down. They feel betrayed. They think the system is broken. It is not broken. It is working exactly the way it was designed to work. That is what makes it so expensive. The system does not watch your account in real time and applaud when you finally pay. The system asks the bank for one picture a month, one number, one snapshot of your balance on one specific day. That number gets sent to the bureaus. That number sits on your report. That number becomes your public face to lenders until the next picture replaces it. That is why so many perfectly responsible people keep getting punished. They are paying the bill, but they are paying after the camera already clicked. That is the entire trick. Now, I want you to really understand the timeline, because once you see it clearly, the whole subject becomes mechanical instead of emotional. Your credit card runs on a billing cycle, roughly 30 days. You spend throughout the month groceries, gas, subscriptions, travel, repairs, whatever life happens to require. Then the cycle closes. That is the key date. The statement closing date, when that date arrives, the bank freezes the number. Whatever your balance is at that moment becomes the balance on the statement. That statement balance is what usually gets reported to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Then, weeks later, comes the due date. That is when most people pay, and that is where they get fooled, because by the time they pay, the bureaus have already seen the earlier number. That is why I say the score is based on the photo, not the apology. You can pay every cent in full and still look risky for the entire month if the photo was taken while your utilization looked high. This is why the average responsible person can feel like he is doing everything right and still keep stepping on the same rake. Now, why does this one number matter so much? Because credit scores are built from several categories, and one of the biggest is utilization. Payment history matters most. Fine, that makes sense. Paying on time matters. But right behind it sits amounts owed, and utilization is the heart of that category. In plain English, utilization means how much of your available credit appears to be in use when the photo gets taken. If your card has a $5,000 limit and the statement closes with $2,000 on it, the model sees 40% utilization. It does not care that you have the money. It does not care that you will pay in full. It does not care that you have never paid $1 of interest in your life. It sees 40%, and 40% looks riskier than 2%. That is why this category matters so much. Nearly 1/3 of the score is being influenced by what the bank reported on that day, not by your character by the photo. Now let us make something even clearer, because this is where many people miss the second trap. The model does not only care about overall utilization across all cards, it also cares about each card individually. That means you can have excellent total available credit and still damage your score if one small limit card is heavily used when the statement closes. A person may have $50,000 of total available credit, keep overall usage modest, and still watch the score dip because one low-limit card reported a very high percentage. That feels unfair. Good. A lot of financial systems are unfair in emotionally stupid ways while still being internally consistent. The model is not asking, is this person reasonable in total? It is asking, does any individual account look stressed? That is why a maxed out card sends such a bad signal even when your other cards are fine. Now here is the part that should make you feel hopeful. Utilization has almost no memory in the way late payments do. This is one of the greatest little gifts in the entire scoring system. A missed payment can haunt you for years. Utilization usually resets every month. If the reported balance looks bad this month, fix the reported balance next month, and the score can respond very quickly. That means this is not one of those problems you need 7 years to undo. This is a timing problem. Timing problems can be solved. And the solution is beautifully simple. You pay before the bill is created. That is the loophole. Not because it is illegal, not because it is a secret in the conspiratorial sense, because the average consumer has been trained to think the due date is the important date. It is important for avoiding interest and late fees. It is not the date that controls the photo. The date that controls the photo is the statement closing date. That is the real ruler. So if you want the bureaus to see a lower number, you do not wait until the due date. You make a manual payment a few days before the closing date so that the statement closes with a very small balance instead of the full amount you use during the month. That is the move, and once you understand it, your entire relationship with credit cards changes. You stop using them as if the due date were the whole game. You start using them like a stage set where you control what the audience sees when the curtain rises. That is the difference. Now let me make it concrete. Suppose your statement closes on the 15th of every month. On the 11th, you log in and see a $2,000 balance on a card with a $5,000 limit. That is 40% utilization. If you do nothing and wait, the statement will close at 40% and the bureaus will see 40%. If instead you make a payment on the 11th or 12th and knock that balance down to $100, then when the 15th arrives, the bank reports $100. Now the bureaus see 2% utilization, same spending, same cash, same card, same month, different photo. That is the whole game. Now let us talk about the next mistake people make once they learn this. They assume zero must be best. That sounds logical. If low utilization is good, then no utilization must be perfect. That is not how the model behaves. Reporting zero on every card month after month can actually be slightly less effective than reporting a tiny balance on one card. That surprises people good. They should be surprised. The scoring model wants to see controlled use, not total disappearance. If every card reports zero, the model has less evidence about how you handle revolving credit. A tiny balance on one card tells the system two things at once. You are using credit and you are using it with discipline. That is stronger than total silence. This is where the 1% rule comes in. Not exactly 1% by divine law, but very low. Usually something like 1 to 6% is where elite scores tend to live. That is why the best technique is often called all zero except one. If you have multiple cards, you pay them all down so they report zero except one card, where you intentionally let a tiny balance report, not because you want to carry debt, not because you want to pay interest. You will still pay the statement balance by the due date and avoid interest. You are simply letting one card report a tiny balance so the system sees active, low-risk use instead of total inactivity. That is a very different thing from carrying a balance, and this is where so many people get confused. Reporting a balance is not the same as paying interest on a balance. Those are different events. The statement reports the balance. The due date determines whether you pay interest. You can let $10 or $20 report on one card and still pay that amount in full before the due date, no interest. Better photo. That is the move. Now, I want to talk about automation because this is where most people fail. Knowing the strategy is not the same as using it. You need a system first. Find the statement closing date on every card, not the due date, the closing date. The due date is what the bank advertises loudly because they care very much about getting paid on time. The closing date is often tucked into the statement itself because it matters to them much less that you understand the photo than that you pay the bill. So go into each card account, pull up a recent statement, and find the billing cycle end date, write it down. Second, set reminders 2 or 3 business days before each closing date. Why business days? Because transfers take time. You do not want to make a payment the day before the closing date and then discover it posted after the photo was already taken. That is amateur work. Give yourself space. Third, on reminder day, check the current balance and pay it down to where you want it. If you want to use the 1% rule, calculate 1% of the limit and leave roughly that amount. Fourth, let the statement close. Then, when the due date comes, pay the remaining amount in full. That avoids interest and keeps the photo clean. That is the whole system, simple, mechanical, repeatable. Now, I want to say something about auto pay because people misunderstand its role. Auto pay is excellent for avoiding missed payments. I respect that. Missed payments are poison. They do far more damage than utilization swings. But auto pay is usually designed to pull after the statement closes. That means it protects you from late fees, not from ugly photos. So use auto pay for the due date if you like. Fine, but do not imagine it solves the utilization problem by itself for that. You need the manual pre-close payment. That is the distinction. Now let us discuss another trap, credit cycling. This is what happens when you max out a card, pay it down mid-month, then max it again, then pay it again, using the same credit line over and over in one cycle. Sometimes people do this because they are trying to earn rewards while spending heavily. Sometimes because their limit is too low for normal life. Banks can dislike this behavior. It can trigger reviews, freezes, or account closures because it can look unusual or risky from the issuer. Perspective, the adult solution is not to keep dancing on the line. It is to ask for a higher limit. A higher limit is one of the easiest, honest ways to lower utilization without changing lifestyle, much at all. If you already pay in full and your usage is responsible, a credit limit increase can improve the whole system naturally. Same spending, lower percentage, cleaner photo. Sometimes the simplest fix is not better timing. It is more room that matters. Now, I want to say something broader because this entire conversation reveals a bigger truth about modern finance. Systems often do not reward what is morally obvious. They reward what is mechanically visible. That is why people feel gaslit by credit scores. They think the system should reward the fact that they were responsible in substance. The system replies that responsibility is whatever got captured in the data feed when the bank sent the number. That is why sophisticated personal finance is often less about virtue and more about understanding what the machine is actually measuring. Once you understand the machine, you stop feeling cursed. You start adjusting inputs. That is one of the most important shifts an adult can make with money. Now let me tell you what this strategy will not do. It will not erase late payments. It will not fix collections. It will not correct identity errors. It will not repair derogatory marks on its own. If your score is stuck in the 500S or 600S, utilization may not be your only problem. There may be larger wounds on the report. Fine, those need separate work. But for the huge number of people who pay on time and still watch their score jump around for reasons they do not understand, utilization timing is one of the fastest levers available. It is one of the rare places in personal finance where a simple calendar fix can produce results quickly. That is why I like it so much. Not because it is glamorous, because it is controllable. I love controllable things. Now, if I were reducing this whole story to one Buffett-style truth, it would sound like this. The credit system is not judging whether you eventually paid the bill. It is judging what your balance looked like on the day the bank took the picture. So the people with elite scores are often not more responsible in some grand moral sense. They simply learned how to clean up the room before the camera clicked. That is the lesson. Find the closing date, pay before it. Let one small balance report if you want the strongest profile. Pay the rest by the due date. Repeat. Because once you understand that the score is based on a photo, not a biography, the game stops looking unfair and starts looking mechanical. And mechanical games can be won by people who finally bother to learn the rules.